live. Thank you. We just named a couple ways in a brief conversation about look at the infinite opportunities for this. This doesn't, of course, only include things like volunteering. That's just one way for compassionate action. The truth is, how do we live it every breath? Like sitting right here, right? No box to move, no good morning, Dia. This is a time in the Christian tradition that I happen to really like. Dia's moving in. We're going to create a little space for her. This time is called Advent, right? Advent. And I love Advent because Advent is the quiet time. Sometimes even understood to be the dark time before the light. And there's a lot written about how do we then use the quiet time, the dark time, the still time to nourish, nurture, and I'll say from these traditions, train for the moment of action, for the moment of aliveness, for the birth, right? For the happening, for the light. You can think of this and if you think about any of your root traditions, whatever those might have been, you will see both, won't you? Times in quiet, times in stillness, times in reflection, contemplation, prayer, and then times for what? Action. Times for, I forgot what my neighbor from South Carolina used to say, putting it up, right? Time for showing up, time for living it now. And these teachings, I think, are most profound for me because there is these two elements, the training, the contemplation, the quiet, but it is not in and of itself, says the teaching, sufficient. Hours a day you can practice. All day you can sit in stillness, silence, and open space. I've told the story about the monk that I had a little Vipassana romance with, sitting next to me for 10 days, didn't move for 10 days, walked out at the end of the retreat. I was just walking up to say how much I admired his stillness, and he was swearing and kicking his tire on his car. And I mean, went off, wasn't subtle. He was great in the contemplation, in the concentration, in the stillness. But we don't want to mistake this, right? This is why we're so devoted at EMC to compassionate action. It is in our mission, isn't it? For this reason, it's not enough to sit here for 45 minutes or 4 hours or a whole day or 10-day retreats. So don't be impressed. Don't be impressed. Be watchful of this. I went on a 30-day retreat. I went on a 3-year retreat. The real question is, how do you treat your partner? How do you treat your mother? How do you treat your neighbor? How do you, isn't it? Yeah, that's its nature. And that's the truth in all of our spiritual growth and development. So Advent is one of my favorite because it's always made sense to me that there has to be some drawing together, stilling, and a kind of a crucible of, I'll call it wholeness, right? I've got to be okay here to then be able to go without reactivity, without harm into the world, because the world is a place of suffering, isn't it? It's a place of suffering. You guys were just, Carrie and Renee, in a very casual conversation about work. We're just talking about this difficulty of going in every day, right? Where there's illness, where there's people struggling with death and loss and grief and change. And so how do we prepare? And that's Advent. How do we prepare then for this reality? The Buddha himself says the reality of what? The reality of change. And in that reality, that abiding reality, there will be birthing and deathing, grief and ecstasy, right? And to be watchful be watchful of getting caught in one of those energies, because guess what's coming? The other one, isn't it? The other one. It's the truth of this. And this is why we were talking the last 2 weeks before about equanimity. How do I greet it all? How do I greet the birth with joy and ecstasy and aliveness? How do I greet spring, right? How do I greet this then? This cooling, this coming together, this cuddling, bundling, and quiet. And of course, who speaks to this in a profound, beautiful way? But John O'Donohue, right? Who was really a Christian mystic from my point of view, not just a poet. And so he wrote a poem here. I want to see if I can find it. And of course, you're all moving with me through. Let me see if I can pull it up here. He speaks to this darkness. So does David White, doesn't he, really strikingly? He speaks to the necessity for the darkness. And that if we're only in the doing, and we notice we have to balance this, don't we, ourselves? If we're only in action, if we're only in anticipation, it also will not be sustainable, right? It's not workable. We have to balance. This is also equanimity. I want you to know, I'm going to see if I can't pull this up. It left. Okay, not going to be able to read that. I will send it to all of you. I will read this one from John. It is not the one. I'm looking for the one called Darkness. I will send it because it is striking. Recording in progress. And I would like you to hang on. There we go. I'd like you to reflect on this. Resting, abiding in the darkness as well. Don't we do that really every single meditation? There is a moment in every practice, in every sitting, in every meditation, where there's the ego is briefly. Wait a minute. And there's a bird, and here's the ground, and here's these others. And before we completely open into the darkness, into the stillness. And here's John O'Donohue. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire. We were talking about cravings this morning. Feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. That's the busy mind. Still not able yet to disconnect. One more, right? One more. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? This busy, this distracted, this caught? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, it never is, by the way, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning. This is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, your awareness knows the path, even when you have forgotten. Right? Your soul, your spirit, your awareness knows, even when you have forgotten. The thing I struggle with others the most is, can you allow the stillness on the path to knowing? Can you allow it? And the answer is no. I'm scrambling. I'm struggling. I'm clawing. No, I cannot be still. And what do we know? Until you are, this will remain the struggle. Until. When you're drowning, I don't know if any of you know this, you probably do, some of you are swimmers. What do they say? Get still so you can see the way. You feel the rise that it takes you, right? In all the scramble, you're likely to drown. And it's true in life and in the water as well. So take one last sip of your warm beverage and we'll prepare to sit. I didn't move this. Let me get this out of the way. So I can not be side turning. Here we go. All right, so let's prepare to sit. Now remember, in non-meditation meditation, which that is Pema's and the Tibetan method, the Tibetans use this method. There is a resting in space, recognizing objects, but not being caught by them. This is why the eye is open. And so Vipassana's meditation practice says this: your eye takes 80% of your mental energies. And so we're going to begin with closed eye because we have to create a little bit of a buffer between all of the objects and resting first awareness in a single object, the breath, a chant. And so just see what's true for you. The truth is, with training, right, we're both going to confront objects and then recognize the space in which they all sit. So you choose eye open or closed. You're still going to center the eye. You're going to allow it to rest somewhere. There's a little bit of science in this that says if you could follow the line of the nose and then pick a point, that would be most restful for the eye. And so investigate that for yourself. Establishing stability of mind, purifying the mind, unifying the mind. And then we allow this very breath moment to be Advent, to be the arrival, to be the opening, the resting. The mind takes the shape of that which it rests upon. We are cultivating here open space, inner and outer. Thoughts will arise, sensations appear, emotion is stirred like the wind, and it is no problem. It is simply the appearances arising in open space. See if you can find your way resting in open space. The words appear and disappear, and we smile. Not caught, no struggle, no resistance, and certainly not no thinking. This is not required. Can you give your fullest attention to the open space? You cannot separate yourself from the open space, both inner and outer. But a stillness and a silence is required to make contact, to remember. Resting in the stillness, we can see most clearly. We can be most open-hearted. We can respond to whatever is arising. Moving from small mind to unified, infinite, all embracing. Resting in this stillness and exquisite rest. This is the only place we can begin to see our true nature. It is not the worried mind. It is not the shamed mind. It is not the hopeless mind. It is not the fearing mind. We see that mind arise and pass like the wind. We are resting in the heart mind of bodhicitta, awakened heart mind. This mind opens, includes, allows, embraces all objects as objects. Seeing that whatever arises, whether it be pleasant or unpleasant, whether it's mind states or thoughts we like or those we don't, thoughts as thoughts. Resting back in open space, seeing all thoughts for their true nature, appearing, preferencing, craving, or rejecting, evoking a somatic experience, tightening, contraction, opening, ease. And no matter where we catch that arising, the practice is the same, opening as quickly as we can into the open space, the sky-like quality of mind. In which all clouds pass. And once we've established that open space, that sky-like quality of mind, we can begin to attend with greater skill, with greater equanimity, with greater compassion, love, kindness, patience, not only to our own experience and thoughts, but to others. But for just now, I'd like you to pick a thought that maybe you had during this practice, maybe one you've had in the last day that kind of hooked you, a believed thought that hooked you. This is never going to work. I don't know if I can do this. Why am I still doing it like this? Why are they still doing it like that? A thought about oneself, a thought about another. By the way, they're the same. The critical thought about another also comes back to you. And see if you can now invite that thought in that vast open space with friendliness, with inquiry, with curiosity, with openness. Inviting the thought. Breathing with it for several breaths. That may invoke a scene or a vignette of an experience. That's just fine. I'm recollecting where I was and the visual for me of that scene. Just keep coming back to that thought. And then I'd like you to, when you're ready, after you've invoked it a bit, drop beneath the thought now. Remember, we're getting under the words to see if we can't abide the experience. Drop into the soma, to the body, to the physiology, to the physical felt sense. And see if you can't just open into that for a time. You could invite the thought again if it begins to dim, but really it's to capture this experience of tenderness, or tightness, or grip. Or a block. Maybe an ache or nausea or queasy. Make contact. We're holding this experience in that vast open space. So you can breathe back into that openness at any time. Ground yourself and then move back to the object, to the experience, to the physiology. Just see what happens as you rest there, opening without preference, without bias. Without the storyline. And then what really I find very interesting is to notice where the storyline still hooked. To notice the resistance to the open space, to notice the struggle, I just had a thought, but he is impossible. That's a part of the old story. That's a part of the hook. That's a part of what's keeping this mind, this heart in suffering. And if you catch one of those old hooks, it's a real opportunity to open yourself to the truth of your own suffering. This is the cause of suffering. In this very moment, the light shines in the dark, and we can begin to feel for ourselves. Feeling my own grip, my own closed heartedness. I recognize my own fear, my own aggression, my own preferencing, wanting something else. And in the staying, in the opening, in the contact, I'm beginning to heal. That contact, that staying, that feeling for oneself is compassion. Can you breathe it into the tight spot? Can you open a little? And feel for yourself. This is a moment of suffering. It is a part of this human experience. I and others just like me feel this grip, this tightness, this fear, this hatred, this woundedness, this pain too. And as I feel for myself, so I begin to feel for all beings. And the tightness becomes tenderness. And the tenderness is the path to open-heartedness. And that's the open space. That is the heart of bodhicitta. the radiant bright light of bodhicitta holding whatever is arising, the doubt, the grief, the confusion, the resistance. It doesn't matter. It's all workable in the arms of bodhicitta. And in its time, it simply gets bigger. We can then call a recollection of another. We can remember another moment where ourselves or another were caught in the grip of samsara, in the cycle of suffering. And we can bring this same bodhicitta heart, the same radiance, the same clarity, the same openness to them. Whenever we get hooked or stuck or clogged, we can simply come back to that vast open space, to that heart of bodhicitta. And begin again. Maybe it's a half a breath, and it's good. And also in its time, you'll notice that the suffering invites, by its nature, the blessings, the wishes for happiness, for ease, for the end of suffering. We can invite those very phrases or that imagery. We can shine down that bright light. We can draw it into our own hearts and repeat those phrases. May we all have happiness and the causes for happiness. May we be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we be in joy and gratitude, remembering our blessings and wishing these same blessings for all beings. May we rest and dwell within that wide open, vast, infinite space, the heart of bodhicitta, free from all afflictions. Free from all limited mind states, free from that protected, guarded, closed off heart. And find the path to the end of suffering. And may this practice today contribute may this Bodhi heart, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be. And where it has arisen, may it never diminish, but grow and flourish evermore and more. And then every little thing is going to be all right, like that song says. Can you feel that? Yeah, now we're warm. This is we've heated up the space with bodhicitta. We're warmer. Bea, are you going to try to get out of here? You can do it.
Sorry.
Have a great day. So what could you feel? Let's just talk about it from a physical sense. What did you feel? What did you notice?
A great peace.
Great peace, Renee said. A great peace.
Like in space, a floating sensation.
Little floating sensation, Larry says.
A lot of sadness, tears is you let go of the guard that you kind of walk around with, contraction, and then a little bit of that expansion.
Yeah.
And not joy, but more dilute sadness. There was some floating kind of sensations.
It's getting a little more,
Expansion,
yeah,
like
a little
just
more
barely,
spacious,
yeah.
expanding.
And
It's
not-
less grounding, right? There's less
Mhm.
objects to hold,
Yeah,
grip onto.
and less intensity of emotion or even this, yeah, emotion, less intense.
Less intensity of emotion. Poonam is saying a little more sense of expanding, a little less contained, guarded, gripped, and sadness. 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 Yes. Yes. What do you think that sadness is? I think it comes up a lot, by the way. I think it's a part of the opening.
It's just, so you're feeling the tenderness, I guess, and the vulnerability.
That's right. That's right, isn't it? If we're not guarded, then we're going to have to slowly, we get to do this in our time, by the way. There's no ripping open the heart. It's not skillful. But I notice for myself, there's always a certain amount of grief and sadness at the contractedness and its consequence to me. And then, or its consequence to others. The very harsh thought, the very shutdown, whatever that is, that actually I know costs me my own tender, vulnerable, and beautiful heart. Costs me, not the other, who's haplessly doing whatever they're doing, right? And tumbling in the as well. But because of these practices, we can see more clearly. We can know by felt sense the consequence of that guard, of that shutdown, of that of those belief thoughts for ourselves. For ourselves. And then you can go, wait a minute, I don't want to do this to anybody. I don't want to do it to me. I don't want to do it to the other. Because there is no benefit. Now, we've also been talking a little bit about in equanimity, there are also appropriate boundaries. There is out of my care for me and you, I will not allow this. Out of my care for me and you, not out of my hatred for you, but out of my genuine care, I cannot allow the propagation of greed or craving or ill will, or we can't keep throwing food away, we said, didn't we? We just did that little moment of, no, we can't do it like that. And we have to, take a stand. We have to go, no, we can't do that like that anymore. And then what do we all do? Well, I don't know how to get the food out of the dumpsters at Ralph's. We don't know how to, we spent the last 10 years going, we don't have a system for that. And what little by little, moment by moment, right? And it began, by the way, with those others going, we're going into those dumpsters and we're going to take that food out. By the way, it was illegal at the time. You couldn't do that. In fact, they locked them for a time, right? Because somebody said, this is the wrong thing. We can't do this. There are people not eating. What are we doing? Throwing away lettuce because its top leaves are brown. This is crazy, right? And it was, by the way, it was crazy. And so, alone, together, individually, collectively, we train.
Do you know how to make sense of this? But the initial sadness of, okay, that shouldn't have happened, and then you have your compassionate boundary where, okay, we're going to put a stop to this, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's
going to move away.
Yeah.
And then that, dilution during the meditation seating.
Yes.
But then there's still that immense, not as immense, but there's a different kind of acceptance in sadness that this happened, and
Yeah.
it is like it doesn't bring you joy even taking the right steps. It maybe dilutes out, it stops the bleed in one way,
Yes.
but it's still sad at the end of it, as how things unfold. So how do you come to,
Yeah, I really know what you're saying. You know, the sad, so we're not done, is what I'll say. We're not
Mm.
done with this process. So just start there. This is not the end of it, which is I'm at the end, and the most I can feel, sense, or know is that this is, however now safe I am, however right this has been put, the sadness should be gone. Well, first of all, that's a myth. That's right. There is continued sadness for the life that could not be lived, right? For the goodness that could not arise, for the beauty that was maybe not developed, or right? Can't we still feel grief for that? And the answer is, of course we can. It would be crazy in some way. I just think of an infant, right, that dies, and then to say to parents, get over it, would be cruel, really, wouldn't it? It makes my heart hurt even when I think of something like that. And if we stay there with tenderness, right, we hold them, us, in that tenderness, what do you suppose is the result? Openness. And that compassionate exchange, and that love. And we learn how to rest there. It isn't like that necessarily leaves. We don't want to say that then eventually you get over it. I think that's wrong. I don't think that's fair, is it? To go and then you get over it. But that's not the point of emotion. It isn't to go and then we put that away and then we just rest in this joy or this. It is, can we hold both? Really, the truth of loss, the truth of grief, the truth of sorrow, right? The truth of this is all real. We're not making this up. And the abiding bodhicitta. And this too can be held. This too can be brought close. This too, and it's true, it will break our own hearts, won't it? Of course it will. And there's no way out of that. I don't know it. Carrie doesn't know it. She does this every day. I'm guessing she cries in some way every day over the truth of suffering and the truth of right? And the truth of the loss. That's its nature. So that's not broken. But I believe it can be held in something larger, right? That's an experience, but it can be held. And yes, this is the truth of this human thing. Right?
Maybe it's maybe I'm being shallow with this, but there's this part of me that wants it to be a certain way. There's not compassion there. There's just like, hey, wait a minute. And it doesn't look like it's ever going to be the way I want.
I want it easier.
Yeah.
I want it more peaceful. I want it friendlier. I want you to be nicer. I want you to be nicer in my way, not your way. I want you to, right? My husband's an acts of service guy. I'll use him directly. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't serve. Don't serve. Just have a conversation. That would work for me. But guess what? Very limited idea about love, isn't it? Very limited. Like love only comes that way? Well, no, it's infinite. It's making pancakes and cleaning the thing and right as well. And I have to remember that this is me and my preference happening right here, right now, called if only you could have a conversation. This could all go better.
Right? We can
There
see
it is. Yeah.
see
And then
that.
I laugh.
Right.
Right. And then of course the issue is never the other, really. Right. It's never the other. It's always what is this limited nature of my own
Well, that
ideas.
laughing part, that's what you just said. I'm really But you can really look at it and kind of go, this is funny in a way, weird.
Every cartoon ever written, every comedian ever who spoke speaks to that. And then you were a knucklehead is really and can you see that with compassion? Really, with a kindness and a tenderness towards yourself, because this is suffering. That's suffering. He's impossible. This is suffering.
How, I understand what you're saying, that it's not the other, but
No.
what if it is the other? What if it is?
Isn't
Well, of
there
course
any
it
other
is.
time it could be the other?
Yeah.
It's
Like,
never
what
the
if
other.
it is
Bad
the
news.
18-year-old son who is incredibly disrespectful and rude
Yes,
and entitled.
yes. Perfectly, I might
Wow.
add.
Been through that one.
Like all
Perfectly.
the time, like all the time.
Every thought in his head is, you're horrible and I wish you were dead
I think that
also.
It
And
will always be
those of
there.
us who have children,
it is.
right, are
I
smiling.
know everything.
We're
and
smiling at you, right? Like, we know. We know.
Total dick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is it never, I'm gonna really go bold, never the other? Uh-oh. And I really mean it. I'm not being facetious.
Well, he's kind of doing what he's built for, right? I mean, that's.
Isn't he
good.
perfect? Is this not the perfect 18-year-old boy?
Yeah,
Going, fuck you in the morning, fuck you at night, and fuck you in the night. Right, perfect.
he's finding his path.
He's perfect. He is perfectly 18-year-old boy. Does that mean, though, and it compassionately understanding the truth of that, and then saying, how do I not then engage in unskillful fuck you too? This is going to go nowhere. In fact, it's right. But to say, look, I know this is hard for you and I. We're going to, right, take us some space. You're still going to have to make your bed. I can't help. He's probably not gonna. And then, right, how do we skillfully form relationship to the suffering in another? To the suffering in another. Because, by the way, he's confused too. He doesn't know either. He is feeling around with a hammer to figure out where things are and aren't for him, as adolescents do. You're just heads in the way. And your heart,
Seeing the bigger picture.
yeah, right,
That's really it.
isn't it?
And also the acceptance that this is the way it is.
It really is, yeah.
Not be what I want to do.
And it's
But this
not
is
likely to
what
be
happens.
over, is it? It's not likely with all the prayer, all the opening, all the skillfulness, by the way. I promise he's not likely to transform tomorrow. Neither should he. And though, could we see more clearly, which is, this is not him. This is a phase, a stage, a necessity, we might even say. And then how do I skillfully form relationship with that? And then we're bringing in the other for equanimity. How do I set appropriate limit? No, you still can't be out all night. No, I am still going to get you. No, we are still going to drug test. No, you're not going to drive the car and have the phone and do, no, still without aggression. And I think that's really tricky.
I just was thinking when you were saying that this is the importance of remembering that you're a whole. There's people around you. There's the open space to guide you, because sometimes when you're caught in the middle of that, you can't see it. But for you to share it with us, we can stand back without the emotion and maybe see the bigger picture she was talking about. Give you this.
Space, that's that
Wisdom
open
is
space,
all that open space
isn't it?
really is. Gives you a chance, I think, to see that overall perspective. So that, I see this for the first time. I went through this stuff too. I have a toddler grandchild. I've been reading some stuff by psychologists about their tantrums. It says acknowledge their feelings, deny or tell them they're not allowed to be that way, but still have a boundary.
Mhm.
Otherwise,
And it's
they're all
kind of
gonna
what
be
he's
dead.
doing too. He's doing
Right.
an 18.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
Did anybody hear that? We're saying that, well, let's say all of us, we were using examples of Kelly's 18-year-old son, and Renee gave an example of her 2-year-old toddler going through her own individuation, her own finding herself, her own wanting what she wants when she wants it, and how to be loving, responsive, mirroring. I can hear you. I can see you want the cookie right now, right? That really looks like good. And, after we eat, then we can, that we're providing boundary for safety, really. Isn't that really what it's about? The boundary is really about that. It's really for your well-being. It's for safety. It's not to punish, not to teach you a lesson, not to go, you can't do that. I have a mother I'm working with right now as an example. She keeps saying she's getting better at the boundaries, but now she's saying to her daughters, you can't do that to me. Like, we can't wait. No, this isn't them doing it to you. This is not I know. Well, they're calling me name. Well, I know it looks like that, right? See how we get lost and caught? And we do this with partners. We do this with neighbors, don't we? We go, you're doing this to me. No, I'm enacting this. I'm expressing this pain. It is looking sloppy and dangerous and deceptive, and it's suffering. These are the faces of suffering, by the way, in its 10,000 disguises. It's infinite, really. By the way, so is the path to the end of suffering. It is also infinite. Can I hold this? And what part of me is shut down here? What part of me is closed off? What part of me just wants it to be some other way and wants you to be some other way so I can be comfortable? Right? And just knowing that there's a freedom in that. Just knowing.
I guess I really like, it's always like, enough, compassion doesn't necessarily mean I have to put myself in the place where I'm gonna, and I think that was really helpful for me.
That's right. Idiot's compassion, we call that. Idiot's compassion means I will let you do harm to me and others. No. Loving you, the answer is no. Caring about you, the answer is no. And toddlers, right, the most dangerous beings in the world, you don't let them put the key in the outlet, right? You lovingly, out of my care for you, out of my deepest regard for you, you're not gonna be doing that, and you're gonna get nothing but kickback. Perfectly. Because at 18, about 18, just using this Kelly's example, what's the truth? I want the privilege to kill myself. That's what I want. I want the privilege. I want to own it all to actually do potential. Whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it. And that includes harm. And the answer is no. No, you never get that. You don't get that at 18, 28, 98. And by the way, we have a culture that says, and we will stop you. If you're going to get to, and the answer is, I don't know where the limit is. I don't know where the line is. So I'm flopping all over. Yeah. Now, what's most important about this is, what does that mean for us when we see unskillfulness? How do you not be unskillful in the face of it?
I can't help but think it. And my 17-year-old, he went out at 6:30, came home at 9:30 at night, and I heard him throwing up. And I just, for a moment there, I had just settled in my jammies. I go, "Are you okay?" He goes, "Oh yeah." So I walk back, and he is wasted, like just wasted after like a giant box of like Forenza. But it wasn't just that, but he's 6'4", and he threw up like a toddler everywhere. But I think that the interesting part for me was, because I have a 19-year-old who pretty much like, that he was very calm. He looks and goes, "This is happening." I go, "It is." Oh, guess what? You gotta clean it up too. It was just everything. But I think just that idea of kind of calmly going through it, you know, making sure that I'm not gonna clean all this up. We're gonna be in it together and go through it. But I just think, I don't know. So you don't want to give them the right to self-control, but at that age, you're the consultant. Training them.
And I think sometimes it looks, though I don't think aggression will ever serve. I think you have to take a stand. And I think that is challenging. How to take a stand without aggression, I think is very challenging. And how not to just go like, "Ugh, okay, forget it. I don't like conflict, so I'm going to do nothing."
Right.
Or, you know, beat the crap out of someone. Neither is right, right? We know these polarities. It's how do we keep walking middle
Yeah,
path?
waiting for those moments to have my feedback was, when is the problem for you? You never know how far they'll take. Just need to know I don't know. Fun. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
How do you hold it?
Well, I
How
think
do
that's
you
what we're
hold it?
trained
That's right. How
to
do
take our
you hold
reaction of it so that we see
it?
it.
See it.
But what I
Yeah.
was trying to also say was to the community of people, the community of the world, is supposed to realize that we have that to rely on. No, we can't.
And that's very helpful.
And just remember, we're all here. There's a lot of people who've already been through this, who could go, yes, you're going to feel like killing them. Yes, you're going to go to bed going, what did I do wrong? I've critically messed this up. It's me. If only I went for when if I'd have just said, no, you're going to do it, we'd all be in a better spot. And it goes, the judgment really falls everywhere. And this is okay, isn't it? We've all done it. Anybody who's a parent of anybody over 8 years old already recognizes these. And how do we, again, come back to our own tender hearts? It is my genuine wish for his well-being. It is my genuine wish for his well-being that's here. And then how do I live that? The answer might be no. No. Out of my genuine regard for you. No, we can't do it. And then you watch the fireworks. Don't you? The door slam, grab the keys, everything that happens. And if you can, bow first. Bow first.
I wish I had this practice when I was raising my son Jordy. One point, he went up to the top of the roof of my house and painted the swastika on the top of my house. And he-
Okay,
Just like-
Greg wins.
Yeah.
Greg wins.
You are the Nazi cat.
It's creative. I
It's
have to say.
creative. But I'm on photos for, the 1970s with him.
Oh, geez.
Triggering
And,
all sorts of.
He
Wow.
was a super challenge, but I can tell you now, he's one of the most loving persons you'd ever meet, but he went through hard times. Drugs, all that stuff.
And don't we all? See, don't we all go through hard times and a time where we didn't say it right, we didn't do the right thing, we weren't skillful either, we got angry instead of clear, we felt hopeless instead of bring hope. And then if you can feel, and we sit still so that we can see it all coming, and by the way, see it all going. This is as important. Like hopelessness arises, and if I can stay with it a little bit, what I can watch is that it also dissolves. And by the way, sadness is one of those emotions. I think grief is a little different. I think grief is a part of our human fabric. I do. I don't think there's any, and then it just goes and we're just resting in bliss. I do think there's a way to be joy filled. And I really mean this, in the midst of it. Because then we've made the contract. We've agreed to take it all. haven't we? We said, I'm gonna open to this too, this heartbreak, this pain, this grief, because this is a part of this human life I can't get out of. It's here. It's not going anywhere. And so can I open wholeheartedly, and often beginning with ourselves, to the truth of,
You mean the contract with them?
yes, don't I? The contract we've made and signed by virtue of this precious human life. We have made and signed. We forget that we did it. But what did we say when we entered? I am going to lose everything. It is all going to change. I cannot grip this. This is not going to be the path. And we learn it over and over and over and over and over and over.
Diana,
Yes.
Anya. And speaking on that, I mean, like, I think these last, like, especially this year, but last year as well, but just leading up to everything is exactly that. It's like, yeah, you make this agreement, we're coming here, we're going to be with whoever we are with, and everything's already written out, and your life is going to be your life. That's it. And there are other choices along the way. And I really recognize my stubbornness or arrogance, and also just
Our
accepting.
vulnerability, right?
Yeah, like I'm so, like really opening up, being closed off for just dealing with life, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, whatever. I've got this. I think these last couple of years have really opened up this vulnerability of no, it's already done. Like, you can do this all under the sun every day, whatever. And the suffering is going to be your suffering. This is what this is. And gosh,
And
now
can we open to that?
yeah, just be open and feel it and just embrace it. This is like
balancing.
This last 6 months for me has just been like, okay, you have to embrace that. And I don't ever feel like I have not ever been open, and I'm really compassionate, and I'm really, I'm not even going to go into that, that's just like ego going blah, blah, blah. But just feeling into my own vulnerability and what I need to do to take care and express to others about taking care of myself as well.
That's
And
right.
And then just looking at, people I know or people I work with, or just a stranger on the street, and you can just like feel them and go, oh my gosh, like, hi, oh, hey, or just making a comment of, hey, how are you? You look beautiful. People don't do that, and they look at you kind of awkward, and you're just like, hi, how you doing? Happy holidays. And they're like, and it's just these little things or little comments or just little bits of kindness out there. And it's just like not being uncomfortable in being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Like what we talked about before. And people, when you do those things, they kind of look at you for a minute going like, okay. And you're like, no, hi, yeah, happy day, you're up. And when people say, how you doing? I'm like, well, I'm upright today. I woke up today.
Right.
I'm grateful for that.
I love what you're saying. I'm going to identify a practice for us all, which is, can we greet the other in open space for at least 3 breaths, letting them really truly in, right, to our own hearts during this Advent, right? Which the Advent is what? This preparing, right, to greet, preparing to greet. So the practice I want us to consider, we'll talk about approaching the one next week. That just brought something to mind for me. Approaching the one, which is very, very held in the Christian myth. But can we approach the one? That means anybody you're going to come eye to eye with for 3 breaths. Can you approach the one for 3 breaths, creating that space and opening yourself to them during this Advent? It's going to be our practice. I want you to remember how long that's going to feel. Just look at somebody, and that's a half a breath, and I'm already like well over my eye contact with Carrie. Done. I don't need that anymore. 3 breaths, creating space and holding for who that other is and who you are and want to be in it. Who you want to be in it. It requires the open space. If you can't do 3, let's start with 1. Start with 1. Whole in breath, whole out breath. I'm greeting you and the space that we've now created together, whatever that is. There may never be an exchange, right? In fact, I'm going to promise you, very likely not, but there already is in this, isn't there? In the holding that, in the looking in the eye of the grocer and the clerk and the person in the line in front of you and behind you. And I want you to see how tender and vulnerable we are. I want you to see how tender and vulnerable we are. Very much so. Can we do that practice? This is going to be our Advent practice, holding space first. We don't have to know anything. We're not supposed to figure it out. I don't have to do, give, retreat, punish, discipline, nothing. 1 to 3 breaths. Hold the other in it and then see what happens. That will be our Advent practice. I know we are well over. Thank you, Tanya, for helping me get to that as our practice. I appreciate you. If we could, you're so welcome, bringing our hands together. And so as long as time and space endures, that's a long time. And as long as there are beings who exist, may I so too remain open, wholehearted, present, vulnerable, to dispel the suffering in the world. And may this practice today remind us this is the path to true happiness and freedom. So Advent is the space in which all things come and go. Advent is that space. This is what this whole main culture period is, right? The preparing for that contact, for that opening, for that inspiration, for the light, for the greeting, for the connection, we'll call it whatever is true for you. But that preparation requires first space. If we can create it, I want you to see what naturally fills it. Also notice, without space, what happens? Habit, suffering, right? Oh, shut down, racing against. Old strategies will just fill the space. The autopilot of that is not really what we're capable of. But it does require space first. All right, everyone. Wonderful to see you all. Whoever is staff, hello. I don't know who you are, but we're happy to have you. Thank you all for being here. We will be practicing Tuesday at 7, Thursday at 7, next Saturday at 7:30. We will be here the whole time. I hope everyone got the newsletter. If you didn't get it, will you let me know? If you didn't get it, will you let me know so that we can include you in our list? How would you let me know? You could either email me at Diana@EverydayMind, write in chat, or let anybody else, Carrie or Greg or anybody else who you have contact with, let them know so that we can, and give us your email so that we can include you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. And also I wrote down those organizations that Leanne mentioned. So I'll reach out to them about that. But if anybody knows of anything else, there's just so much fruit that I just don't want to, or citrus, I guess I should say. I'd rather be
Distribute it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So-
You're so welcome, Tanya. We'll find a good place for that. Thank you.
and I'll be sure to like go collect a bunch of bags and stuff of it and be taking
Thank
it around.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Dawn, good to see you. Margie, good to see you. And I guess that's Steve there as staff. Good to see you all as well. Enjoy your practice and we'll see you all on Tuesday.
They have the support.